Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hey, how you doing everybody? We're here today to talk a little bit more about just the CASO. Obviously reading a little further in, saw a couple things that I thought were interesting. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is there was some dispute about the duct tape and whether or not that would leave a, any kind of residue or some of the adhesive behind on the key or whatever. Well, fair enough. I mean, let's say that this key fob was created by folding the duct tape in a way so that there was very little sticky showing. Maybe like one edge of the sticky or something like that. And let's say it was fashioned that way. Okay. I still wonder, is that even where that one seam or the sticky, kind of still is on that one edge, over a few days, and I have to imagine that this lanyard was created probably on the first day or the second day when Teresa lost the key and they were wigging out, not being able to find the key so that they could move along on their road trip, when this, duct tape lanyard was created. I gotta imagine it was for a couple days at least. Who knows how long Teresa might have left it on there, as a reminder of her trip with her friend, Kelly. So I mean, the thing is that even that one seam, over the course of 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, it's going to be in your pocket. It's going to heat up a bit. It's going to move around. When you pull it out and you're turning it, you're going to bend that duct tape some. The duct tape's going to start to kind of, roll on the edge, because duct tape will do that. And it's my belief that after a couple days, you're still going to end up with that gummy, sticky stuff, especially once it heats up, because once it heats up, it wants to stick to almost anything. And, it's just real gummy and gooey. So it's, so it's my opinion that some of that sticky would likely to be left behind. So I'm going to go ahead and make a lanyard in the spirit of what I just explained, of making it where there's only one sticky seam, one side of the tape that's exposed, basically. Put that through the key and have it like that for about 3 to 5 days and see what it leaves behind on my key. Right? If it leaves something behind, it leaves something behind. If it doesn't leave something behind, then you know what? Move on from the duct tape. It's meaningless. That's the way I see it. Because it's interesting to me. I know how duct tape is, and it's just messy stuff, especially when it, over a few days, getting, constantly bent and squeezed and manipulated or whatever, it gets kind of gross. So anyways, that's that. What I want to talk about today now, to move into it, is y'all know how when I talk about in my videos where I talk about the bones and how I certainly do not believe that the bones started there. And that always leads me to talking about the accounts of this fire. Okay? That people say they saw this fire. There's people saying they saw this fire. Right? But there's nobody saying they smelled this fire. And for those of you out there maybe who are new and don't know, when a human body burns on a fire, it creates a very unique, very powerful, very unmistakable odor. I mean, overpowering odor. And it's really unmistakable. And yet, we have so many people reporting a fire, and there's no smell. Nobody says it. And oh yeah, and the smell, oh my God. There's not. It's only there was a fire. Okay, so what's interesting here is they're asking Joshua Radant some questions and everything, and I find this very interesting. So let's go ahead and move into it, and we'll come on back. Now, I do find some of the statements here of Joshua Radant interesting. Okay, so Dietering Dietering provided Radant with an overhead view of the area, which included the gravel pit on his property and the Avery property, and asked him to place an X on the map for the approximate position where he would have been when he saw the fire or the glow. Radant oriented the map, indicating that north was at the top of the map. Radant stated that the fire was 300 to 400 yards away from his location when he observed it. Radant stated the fire was not spread out and the flames were not extremely high. Radant again indicated he assumed the fire was coming from a 55-gallon drum. Now, he's already told Dietering that once. And for some reason, as he's being asked about the fire again and he's describing it again, he feels the need to say that again. Just find that interesting. Just, that he felt the need to say that to Dietering to hammer that point home. Maybe he didn't feel like Dietering was really paying attention to that part. I don't know. It just kind of shows that maybe, when people tend to repeat themselves, they do it because they feel it's necessary usually. But anyway, we'll move on. Radant stated less than 1 week later, individuals who he believed to be agents with the Wisconsin Department of Justice showed up to re-interview him. Radant indicated the agents told him they believed that Teresa Halbach's vehicle had come west through the field and through the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. Radant indicated he took this as a theory and not as a fact. Radant stated that there was no access to the Avery property other than the Cuss Road cul-de-sac area. Radant also indicated he thought he might have mentioned tracking dogs and not agents. Radant stated at one point it seemed to him that the agents wanted him to change his story about the fire. That's interesting, because I was just about to talk about the fire, and but that's interesting. Joshua Radant felt like these agents were trying to get him to change his story or alter his story about the fire. I find that terribly interesting. Radant stated he does not recall anyone saying that Teresa Halbach's vehicle was on the Radant property before this all came out in the media. Radant was asked about the lights that he mentioned in the Manitowoc County pit. Radant stated that they were large searchlights. Radant was asked about the pelvic bones. Radant stated attorney Kathleen Zellner's team and the media mentioned the pelvic bones. Radant stated that he was made aware of any pelvic bones by law enforcement back then. Radant indicated that he wanted to go over the affidavit line by line with his attorney Patrick DeWayne prior to signing it. The interview with Radant concluded at 14:21 hours. A copy of aerial map showing the Radant gravel pit and the Avery property is included in this report. Investigation continues. Now, I just want to say one thing here. And that is where he talks about the flames here. Radant stated the fire was not spread out and the flames were not extremely high. Okay, then come down here to where it says, it seemed to him that the agents wanted him to change his story about the fire. Okay, now, let's take Scott Taddick, for instance. Okay, as I've always said, I feel like people were being bullied in this case. Now, Scott's original account of the fire was that it was like 3 or 4 feet high when first asked about it. Okay, upon the second time that he was asked about it, it suddenly was more like 6 or 7 feet high, this fire. Okay, by the time we get to trial, Scott Taddick has this fire being as tall as the garage. As tall as the garage roof, So I find this interesting because, number one, here's Joshua Radant saying, no, the fire was not very high. It wasn't very high. And then goes on to indicate that he felt like agents were trying to get him to change his story about the fire. And then we see where other accounts did change about the fire. And this, to me, is extremely interesting, and it's a huge red flag, and I, couldn't help but point it out, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so what I found interesting there is, number one, the way that Joshua, the way that Mr. Radant felt the need to reiterate the point that he really honestly believes that it was a fire from a 55-gallon drum. I mean, that's a pretty specific size drum. But then again, it's probably a common size drum. But anyways, he also says the flames weren't high. Also explains why he describes it as a glow. Why would he be, ask yourself that. He would describe it as if it's in a barrel, the flames are in the barrel, you're just going to see the light from the flames coming out of the top of the barrel. So yeah, it would be like a glow. So that makes sense. And it actually makes me believe his account. It actually makes me, I believe what he's saying, because it seems, it makes sense. There's logic. He couldn't see, he believes it was in a barrel because he couldn't see flames. He saw a glow. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But, so yeah, that's interesting. But then the part when he gets, after feeling the need to push that point home with Dietering, he then goes on to say that he felt like he was being, I don't know, maybe prodded to change his story or his account about the fire. I mean, that's basically what I thought has been going on here all along, is that people were getting, prodded and cajoled to change their statement, essentially. So anyways, so what we're going to move into now is going to be a report about a phone conversation Dietering has with Mr. Halbach, Mike Halbach. Interesting here what they're looking for, because I don't know how much any of you watching this are out there interacting, but have you ever heard the people from the other side, the ones that, they might call guilters, or basically those who feel that Stephen Avery and or Brendan Dassey are guilty? They tell this tale ever since Zellner put out her motion talking about Ryan Hillegas told Tom Fassbender that Teresa had filed a claim on that damage, received a lump sum, but just never repaired it. This is something Ryan told Tom Fassbender back then. What's happening now is that they're coming up empty on being able to prove that. And some of these folks who I was just talking about have been saying, the DOJ, they have a document. She didn't file it with her insurance. That's why Kathleen Zellner couldn't find it. But it was filed with whoever she had the incident with or whatever. It was filed with their insurance. And the DOJ has that. And blah, 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 blah. Okay. Hold on a second. If the DOJ had that proof, like paper trail created by an insurance company about this damage to Teresa's vehicle, they would not be bothering to do what they're asking Mike Halbach to do in this next document. So here we go. Alrighty, a little interesting little thing here with Mike Halbach. Investigator Dietering went to speak with him about received a phone call from Mike Halbach. Michael advised he was not able to find the video depicting the damage of the left frontal directional light on Teresa Halbach's RAV4. Michael stated that he has been through several computers since the time he believed the vehicle, he videotaped the vehicle, and has one or two more places that he can search. So I guess we might find out more about that later. Michael advised that he did not have independent recollection as to whether the damage to Teresa's RAV4 existed, and he was actually hoping that the video would prove it was there. So, to me, what this comes down to is you hear people out there saying that, oh yeah, Teresa did file an insurance claim on it, but it wasn't with her insurance, it was with somebody else's. Well, guess what? If that was the case, if that were true, Dietering wouldn't even be bothering with this. Having Mike Halbach go digging through all of his old computers, all the drives, all the files, and looking for this, little needle in a haystack. They wouldn't be doing that if they had proof of that damage. They don't have proof of that damage existing prior. And when they ask so far you've seen how it's been going in this new CASO report, when they ask people about it, nobody remembers there being damage. Nobody remembers there being damage. You know what I mean? So, and then you have this where they got Mike Halbach scrambling and going through all of his old computers to try and find a video file from that exact time of Teresa's RAV4, and doesn't even, he's not even sure that it's going to be damaged. He's actually admitting that he's not even sure, but he's hoping it will. So, I mean, the choice of words I think are interesting too. All right, so to wrap up, you all know that I've always been saying that the accounts of the fire have always been very strange. The fire always seemed to get bigger or, more massive or whatever as it went along. Things were suggested about the fire to Brendan for him to say, things like that, but none of it comes naturally, okay? And this is why I've always been on about this and about the accounts around this fire. And Mr. Radant puts he puts it right into perspective right there when he's, number one, reiterating the fact to Detective Dietering that he believes it was a fire in a 55-gallon drum. He repeated that to John Dietering, and I gotta imagine that the reason why is because he didn't feel like it registered with him, and that maybe Dietering's questions were, not taking into account what he'd already said about it being a 55-gallon drum. Maybe he felt like Dietering's questions were possibly prodding him to say certain things. And so he then goes on to say that when the agents from the Wisconsin Department of Justice came to interview him back then, that he felt like they were wanting him to change his story about the fire. I mean, it's just bizarre. It absolutely proves what I've been saying all along, that these agents, these people from the state, they were putting pressure on people to say that this fire was there, that they were desperate to do it. And I think that is a huge indicator, a huge red flag, that amongst the many red flags, okay, check out any of the other 300 videos that I've been making for the last 2 years, and you'll see this is not the only red flag. There's plenty. They're all over the place. This investigation is littered with red flags. But anyway, so I just wanted to point those few things out. Like I said, the thing about Mike Halbach, I mean, if they had proof of that damage to Teresa's RAV4, I guarantee you, if they had proof of it, they would not be asking Mike Halbach to go digging through his old computers, all those files, looking some footage of the RAV4 with damage to the front driver's turn signal light. I mean, that's a lot to do, and it's quite a bit to ask Mike to do. If they had this supposed insurance claim proof over at the Department of Justice, this would be completely unnecessary to put Mike Halbach through that, of having to go through those computers and do that. So trust me, they don't have it. That's why Mike Halbach is hoping, because he wants to be the hero and he wants to help and everything, and because we know he believes that Stephen and Brendan are guilty, and that's fine. That's what he believes. But like I say, because of that, he is hoping that he can find something with that damage, because he wants to be able to help the investigators, of course. So I thought that, it's just interesting that he said it that way, that he said he was hoping, because it's, when you're doing that, you're clearly, when you're reading that, let me put it another way. When you're reading that statement at first, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion that he has footage of this RAV4 with damage. But when you get to the end of it, where he's going, oh, actually, I don't even know if the damage is there myself, but I was hoping that the video footage would prove that it was there. I mean, we know that they're desperate for that footage. It would look to me like they're desperate for that. So, anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.